Okay, I think I got to do this. I can do this now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. If any time you can't, raise your hand in the back because we can go over there. Dick now knows how to control it and kick up the volume a little bit if you think we need to kick up the volume.
Okay, so let's get started. It's a little bit early. It's 6:10 instead of 6:15. I'm Dave Burshak, and I'm going to start the program. I want to share some information about Lit 6 and introduce you
to our board of directors. Yeah, there's Felicia. Okay. Let me read the agenda for the meeting first, so you know where we're going. The agenda
is first is an introduction to Fort Bend County Levee Improvement District Number 6, Board of Directors and presenters. Then hurricane forecasting, Fort Bend flood control, emergency management information, evolution of the district. I changed that a little bit, and I put emergency management last because there's going to be so many questions since Beryl sneaked up on us. You know, we started planning this in April, and it took, we got this date, and Beryl came in last week. So, starting at the beginning here, Lit 6 was created in 1984, but it stayed dormant until December 2007. In 2007, the district boundaries were changed, and the first initiative was to protect the courthouse. But at the same time, in 2008-2009, Del Webb was in the plans, but it cratered because the economy cratered, so they stopped. And with the George Foundation, Westendorf, and Caldwell, I moved into Sweetgrass in 2011, and I started going to Lit meetings in 2011. And so today Lit 6 has about 3,500 homes and over 5,300 residents, so we've gotten to be quite large. Del Webb is about 1,530, Veranda is about 1,750, and Williams Ranch is in the neighborhood of 200 to 250, I'm not sure about that. So Dexter McCoy was going to be here, but he's on the way. Okay, great. And you are Lauren Haskins? Excellent, okay. I'll wait till he gets you then. We also have, helping us through the year, our lawyer, Angie Lutz, is here from Ellen Humphreys. And I was going to introduce Constable Mike Beard. Is he here? He's not here, okay. And so Lauren Haskins is the Fort Bend County Project Manager for Planning and Infrastructure. Just stand up and wave, and he works with or for, probably with our Commissioner McCoy. The story on Commissioner McCoy, when we decided that we needed to have homeowners, residents on the board, we got a petition together, we submitted it, he agreed, and the county supported this, and so he appointed 3 of us and increased the board size from 3 to 5. And then we had an election in May, and 5 of us are new directors. So if you could put that map up. Okay, I don't know if you could enlarge that. Yeah, there we go. So that's us, districts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the districts are made up, basically, it's like 50-50 between Veranda and Sweetgrass and Veranda and Williams Ranch. And then there's one district that is solely Sweetgrass, and there's one district that is solely Veranda. So Patrick Wynn is our District 3 director.
He's a civil engineer, and he's a department manager in the city of Houston, and he's off at some kind of conference in California, so he's not here today. Dick Wasser here is District 2, and he's in Sweetgrass. Chris Reed is District 4, and he's like 1/2 Sweetgrass and 1/2 Veranda. And then Felicia Alexander is right here, and she's 1/2 Veranda and 1/2 Williams Ranch. And then I have the part that's District 1, it's kind of where the country club used to be, and then it goes along 762, and then there's nothing as it goes through the George property and across the road. So we'll see what happens with that. So now we're ready to go to our presenters. We're really honored to have these skilled professionals come and talk to us today. Dan Riley from NOAA is the warning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service in Galveston. Jeff Janacek is the first assistant chief engineer for Fort Bend County Drainage.
Ron Deckard is our Lift 6 engineer with Pete Dawson, and Greg Babbs is in the back there, and he's the new manager starting in April of the Homeland Security and Emergency Management Department. So you guys stand up so they can see you, and Greg's over there in the back. Let's give them a hand. I mean, they really, I think they've been working their butts off for the last week and a half. So,
great.
Yeah.
He's kidding.
So we're going to start with Dan Riley, and it's going to be the hurricane forecasting and other.
Give me the right topics for your presentation besides just forecasting.
And also hurricanes in general.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you. All right.
I'm going to go sit down.
Great crowd tonight talking about hurricanes and the hurricane season. Usually these hurricane season talks are before we get a hurricane, but not this year. So
Have them in April.
yeah, exactly. So you can see this is actually an image from last season where you can see a couple of hurricanes there, including the one that curled up into Florida as a Category 4. So where are we in the hurricane season? We're mid-July. And what you can tell by this timeline here is how active it typically is in the Atlantic for different dates through the calendar year, starting May 1st and going through the end of December. And you can see most commonly we start to see a little bit of activity as early as late May, but then not a whole lot usually happens through the months of June and July. Now this was a bit unusual this year because the ocean waters were so warm. The sea surface temperatures in June were more like August that it typically is. So we had a lot of energy building out there for an early season hurricane, and surely enough, we got Hurricane Beryl developed. You can see there we peak around September 12th or 13th, and then we're on the back side of the peak. For here in Texas, if we can get into October, usually we're in better shape because the late season storms, once they form, are more likely to be nudged to the east. So that's usually the case. So far we've had a storm in June with Alberta. We've had another one June into July with Beryl. I'm hoping we can go at least 1 month without a storm during this hurricane season. Now this is an interesting chart here. It's another way to look at the typical hurricane season. And by a measure called integrated kinetic energy, which is basically taking the square of the wind speed of a storm every 6 hours over the Atlantic, it's a measure of the activity of the hurricane season. By this measure, in mid-July, we're just 6% through the hurricane season. So what I'm trying to say is, even though we already had a hurricane, we've got a long way to go for this season. Now this slide got adjusted a little bit, but let me explain what we're looking at here. Let me just explain what we're looking at here. We're looking at there have been 8 landfalling Category 4 or 5 hurricanes in the last 7 years. Well, since 2017 through 2023. So over that 6-year period, there have been more Cat 4 and 5 landfalls than there were in the previous 53 years. You follow me? So we're having more of these rapid intensifiers, especially over the Gulf. And you can see, we've been lucky in a sense in that we had a Cat 4 come in with Harvey down the coast. We had another one with Laura to our east. You can see they've been fairly regularly spaced across the Gulf Coast these last 6 years. So What I'm trying to tell you is there seem to be more of these more intense hurricanes that intensify rapidly over the Gulf. Even Beryl, even though it was a Cat 1, it was just a tropical storm 6 hours before landfall. And it had an intensification phase as it came in, even possibly some gusts to Category 2 down near Freeport. Every storm is different, has some combination of these 5 hazards: flooding rain, damaging winds, storm surge flooding, tornadoes, and high surf. And of course, we've seen every different type of storm here in Fort Bend County. You know, we've seen a storm like Harvey. Didn't have a lot of wind locally, but it had record amounts of rain and flooding from that rain. A storm like Ike, it's more about high winds and power loss for a long period of time. Beryl had that element too. Even though it was a weaker storm than Ike, it caused a lot of wind damage and power loss. Harvey had a lot of tornadoes in the spiral bands. Beryl actually produced a lot of tornadoes too, but more to the east over Louisiana. So what is the most dangerous? Storm surge flooding. If you look at the hazards that actually cause fatalities, storm surge about half. Now, you know, there is a ray of good news for Fort Bend. We're high enough here that we're not in a storm surge zone. But right behind that, flooding rain. And, you know, as we saw with Harvey, how deadly that can be, how dangerous that is. If you look at the other hazards there, high surf, offshore hazards, think about the marine community, really about 90% end up being water related. You know, about 10% wind. You know, wind taking down trees. You know, that's a scenario we see way too often, and people die that way. But it really is, the water is extremely dangerous, the water-related hazard. Now, where do we get these different hazards? Let's look here at Hurricane Ike. Now, I had been in southeast Texas for about 3 months at this point as Hurricane Ike came in. I had worked hurricanes on the East Coast in Virginia, North Carolina. We had a storm there called Isabel. It was a huge Category 2 that started with the letter I. And I saw this, and it was like a flashback because this was very much a similar storm as Isabel back east. Huge Category 2 storm. At this point, you can see the eye of Ike over Galveston Bay. Now let's talk about the different parts of the storm. The ring around the eye is the eye wall. That's where the highest winds are in the hurricane. Keep that in mind when we look at Beryl. All right, we actually had somewhat of an eye wall lifting through Fort Bend County. The spiral bands, also an important part of the hurricane. You can see those kind of sketched in, especially on the right-hand side. That's where you tend to find gusty winds, heavy rain, and tornadoes. We dealt with that with Beryl, but also with Harvey. And so the other thing I want to mention is the high winds are strongest around the center, but they're absolute strongest on the right-hand side of the track in the eye wall. The tornado threat is greatest to the right-hand side of the track, and the winds in general are greatest on the right-hand side. So there is a name you sometimes hear about the right-hand side of the storm. What am I talking about? Yeah, the so-called dirty side. So when it's time for my family to evacuate, the first most important thing to do is get them away from the coast, inland. And then I try to get them left of the track because the impacts tend to be considerably less for the most part. And I forgot to mention the most important thing, storm surge. Now, keep in mind you've got counterclockwise circulation there, so it makes sense, right, that on the right-hand side of the track, the winds are blowing onshore, pushing seawater onshore, and then on the left-hand side, it tends to have an offshore component. So the surge is also greatest on the right-hand side. Here's a look at Hurricane Ike. I still remember this very well, watching the storm come in. Giant hurricane coming right on in. Takes a little jog to the right there. It takes it over Galveston Bay as opposed to left of Galveston Bay. Now we have surge modeling that we can do. We can run Ike left of Galveston Bay, and it creates another 4 or 5 feet of surge. along all those heavily industrialized areas along Galveston Bay, a lot of population. So it was bad. It was really bad in terms of surge, but it could have been even worse for some of those areas around Galveston Bay. The other thing about it, note it's moving steadily along. It's not a Harvey. It doesn't just loop across the area for days. So this is not a catastrophic flood maker. There was flooding from it. But think about this, getting a direct hit by the eye wall, moving steadily through, and a big hurricane. You can expect a lot of wind, a lot of surge, and a huge impact on the power loss. And that's, of course, what we had. Now, on the left-hand side, you can see a snapshot of the wind speed at a certain time as it's making landfall. You can see the very light winds in the eye, and then that, in this case, sort of a horseshoe of really, really high winds. More on the back side and on the right side than on the north side. That's a little unusual. And then on the right side, you can see basically the maximum winds as Ike tracked in. So think about the eye wall sweeping a path across an area, and that you get a map like that on the right. Hurricane force winds really all the way up through the Houston-Galveston area, up through Huntsville, even up toward Lufkin. Let's talk about Beryl now. Beryl was a record maker. It was the earliest Category 4 to form. It was the farthest east hurricane form in June. It was and then, of course, it was the first Category 5, the earliest, rather. All these are record makers on how early it was. But as I said earlier, the ocean waters, when these form, they're more like, peak season, mid, late August. And so as far as that goes, it really wasn't that surprising to get a strong hurricane because the ocean waters didn't look like June. And so you can see that track formed very quickly in the Caribbean, quickly into a Category 5. That was bad news for us because I can tell you back then the general feeling was if it were to stay on the weaker side, it would track further south. But if it were to gain intensity, it may tend to be drawn further north. And so we saw that early intensification, and that was not a good thing. And then it tracked, you can see, what do we have actually showing there? The red indicates hurricane force winds, the yellow, 58 mile per hour sustained winds or greater, strong tropical storm force. And then the blue, tropical storm force, which is 39 miles per hour or greater. So what you see is a swath of hurricane force winds through the Caribbean. It hit the Yucatan, and that did slow it down a bit, knocked it back down to a tropical storm. And then there was a period of time, maybe 24 hours in advance, where it started to lose its structure. It still was swirling around. Boy, I'm getting flustered. And so, there was a question whether it would re-intensify into a hurricane. It was forecast to become a Category 1 for landfall, and sure enough, it did intensify kind of at the last minute. It really got its act together as it was coming right into our area. Here's a look at a radar loop of Beryl. And as it comes within range of the Texas radars, you can start to see that swirl there. It's not as organized as Ike, but you can see at the end it starts to become much more organized. It even has an eye as it works its way through Fort Bend County. It's not as symmetric as Ike. It's more of a comma shape, right? And there's a lot of asymmetry there. The bands on the right-hand side are very prominent. I'm going to run through this again. What you're going to see is the storm really get organized, intensify, come into southeast Texas. The green polygons are flash flood warnings, so you'll see those issued starting right about there. And then look at all the tornado warnings in red at the very end. It's almost like fireworks. There were actually 100 tornado warnings issued just to our east. In those spiral bands on the right-hand side, which is the most common place for them. Here's more of a close-up view of the storm as it's coming in. You can see Let me get a little better look at this. Yeah, we'll put those arrows on there. So on the left-hand side, that's what we call the reflectivity. You'll see that on the news, on the Weather Channel. It basically shows where the rain areas are, also the storm structure. And there's actually an eye there, kind of a ragged eye, just north of Bay City. And that feature actually draws north across Fort Bend County. As I said earlier, the ring around the eye is where you get the strongest winds. Again, this is kind of a partial eye wall, if you will. The arrows on the right-hand side show how fast the raindrops are moving toward and away from the radar. This is a Doppler radar, so it has the ability to measure wind speeds in the storm, based on how the targets are moving. So those purple areas there down near the coast, near Freeport, those are over 100 miles per hour blowing toward the radar at about 2,000 feet. Now, we did have some observations down there we're trying to sort out above 110 miles per hour, right there around the port of Freeport. So it gives you an idea. This was, a heck of a storm. It was at least Category 1, probably some gusts up to Category 2 in those areas at least. Let me see if we can, now, do you have a little arrow showing up there that you can click on? Yeah, just click on the lower left. Right there. Yeah, just click on the image. Right there? Yeah, that should work, I think. Click on it there. Yeah, there we go. All right. So you can see this thing actually swirling around, drawing right up through Fort Bend County. Remember, the ring around the eye is where you're going to get the highest winds, especially on the right-hand side. And so it looks like the eastern part of Fort Bend County did catch that ragged eye wall on the right-hand side. And there probably was a period of relatively light winds, as you have this weird, raggedy-looking eye drawing across the area. But look at all those storms and rain to the right of the center. We talked about the dirty side, classic case where everything is stronger. The winds, the rain, tornadoes certainly later on were just really significant. Also, we had 8 feet of storm surge down in Freeport. That was a lot higher than the Hurricane Center expected. But when surveys were done down there, they found high water marks in some of the structures near Sargent. So this was a heck of a storm. It really did intensify. Okay, go ahead to the next slide. Oh, I got the controls on. All right, here we go. So here are some wind speeds, and this probably doesn't capture everything, but you can see some of the higher winds across the area. From the measurements we have in Fort Bend, we're talking about 40 up to 60 miles per hour. A lot of high winds in the 40s and 50s. No doubt there were some higher winds than that, especially in the eastern part of the county. Look at the Harris County winds, 89. Houston, 84. Hooks, 83. Bush, 83 miles per hour. So, these were winds on par with Hurricane Ike, frankly, because in this case, Houston was on the right-hand side of the track. With Ike, it was more on the left-hand side. And so that made a difference in the wind speeds. Really on par with Hurricane Ike. We did have a 97 mile per hour there. Look at Brazoria County. That's a measured wind speed of 91. And like I said, we have a few unofficially that were even higher than that, up above 110. Harvey, a whole other different type of storm. Now, if you're sitting down in Rockport, you're getting the eye wall. You're getting Category 4 winds. For them, it was a huge wind event. For us, we didn't get the eye wall. We didn't get the wind, but we got the spiral bands. Look at the radar image on the screen here. Some people saw this storm weakening down the coast, and the sun came out like it is now. And we heard a lot of rumbling like, where's all this rain? Is this really going to happen? Probably not. The storm's not even a hurricane anymore. And so we were fighting that at the weather office. We were saying, look, don't let your guard down. We have a heavy rain band coming in tonight, another one tomorrow night. Don't let your guard down. And that was a really tough message to get out. Sure enough, look at the reflectivity in the upper right there. Look at that rain bed. That's the most intense part of the hurricane at that part. Streaming in off the Gulf, producing rain rates of 4 or 5 inches per hour. And right here in Fort Bend, you're catching it as bad as anywhere. Of course, when I came, I mentioned I worked in some other areas, including Virginia, North Carolina. I came here, I talked about Hurricane Floyd and how we had 11 inches of rain and it flooded everywhere. And they said, Dan, that's nice, but in Texas we measure rain in feet, not inches. So this is a good example. Every storm seems to be more, right? Here we have Harvey. That's a 4-foot plus rainstorm for Fort Bend and Galveston County where I live. In fact, possibly some localized amounts up to 5 feet. So just mind-boggling amounts of rain. And of course, that leads to flooding anywhere, and certainly in an urban area. Harvey, not unique. You can see several events here, including Imelda just 2 years later. Lest we think, okay, Harvey, it never happened. 2 years later, didn't hit Fort Bend as hard, but areas not too far east had over 40 inches of rain in a shorter amount of time. Some of those areas flooded that didn't flood for Harvey. So point is, when it rains, it can really rain in feet, especially when you have a slow-moving hurricane or tropical storm. This is the seasonal outlook. We've got a couple things working against us. We have the very warm ocean waters, and we're in a phase of the El Nino La Nina cycle. We're in the La Nina part of that, which tends to be more favorable for development over the Atlantic. So here's the forecast that NOAA came out with back in late May. 17 to 25 named storms. The average is 14. That includes hurricanes and tropical storms. 8 to 13 hurricanes. The average is 7. 4 to 7 major. We've already had 1. The average is 3. Now, more recently, just last week, Colorado State came out with their update. They've been doing this for many, many years. Look at this, 25 named storms is the forecast. So they're going from the high end of that range. So we've had 3 so far in the Atlantic. And so the point I'm trying to make is we've got a long way to go to kind of get through this hurricane season, get us into October when we're in a little better shape. Anything going on out there now? No. That's probably the only good news of the whole talk. Nothing for the next 7 days at least, the way it looks now. And I did also want to make everyone aware, and these links will hopefully be shared out with everyone, our website, but also we have a hurricane guide there in English and Spanish.
Where'd the clicker go?
Where's the clicker?
Oh, there it is, right there.
Thank you, Dave. As Dave said, my name is Jeff Janacek. I'm a first assistant engineer with the Fort Bend County Drainage District. Got up here to talk about the Brazos and the Levee districts, a little bit about Brazos Bayou, but I think when it was all said and done, it's about 90% Brazos.
And number 3 is
I'd like to know a lot about the Brazos Rivers. On the end, you will.
Ron Deckard, wherever he is.
View of the Brazos. Everything in green there represents the Brazos watershed. Some things that kind of point out, if you look, it actually extends all the way west of Texas. The upstream is the river can get. There's nearly always water there because they release from upstream, and there's downstream folks that need it, Dow Chemical and those guys. If you go out there today, the river's at 14 feet, so about 4 feet above low flow condition. If we get to a 30, if you hear that elevation, that's about a once a year type of flood. It's a pretty big event, but it's something that happens pretty much every year. At 40 foot, you get a little bit higher. That's something that happens every 2 or 3 years. And when you start to get to 45, that's minor flood stage as defined by the National Weather Service. 2 months ago, we peaked at an elevation of 45.9 feet. At 46 is when we start to see impacts. At 46, we see minor roadways start to be inundated. These are spots we know well: Baudette Road, Redbird Lane in Fulshire, parts of North Rosenberg, and things like that. We have barricades we have to go out and put out, but fairly minor roads. Once you get up to 50 is when we really start to get the major impacts. It's the major flood levels. Flooding of homes occurs. We see water in structures. Most of those, all of those are outside of levees. That's very important to note. These are older neighborhoods primarily that were developed prior to regulations. Valley Lodge, Cummings Road, north of Rosenberg, parts of Thompson's. At 52, we start to really see major impacts on transportation throughout the county. We know at 52 we're going to lose FM 723 right near Kingdom Heights. We know at 53, say FM 359 near Pecan Grove is going to go underwater at 54. Road, New Territory, we lose the eastbound lanes, and we're going to go to contraflow on the westbound lanes. Harvey peaked at 55.19. It's important to note, I think, to you guys that we had a forecast during Harvey. During the middle of Harvey, we had a flood forecast that came out at 59 feet. We're fortunate. The rain shifted to the east, as Dan said. We didn't get that high. We peaked at 55.19, but we did have a forecast much higher than that. The 100-year flood level is defined by FEMA as around 56 feet, and the 500-year flood level is at about 58 feet. Post-Harvey, we took on a project at the Fort Bend County Drainage District to produce flood inundation maps. And so again, we know a lot of knowledge of Richmond. We talked about how we measure the flow in cubic feet per second. We developed computer models based on topographic data, rainfall frequencies, and we threw flow into that model. And we said, okay, every foot of rise, what does that look like? Not only at Richmond, but extrapolated out from Hempstead all the way down to Rasharon. What that did, that produced a map library. There's a website that we have now that you can access through the Fort Bend County Drainage District website. Type in your address and toggle through different stages at Richmond and see flood extents, flood depth, flood elevations. If you live behind Lid 6, you should be uneventful. You shouldn't see any issues with the elevations that we have out there, which go up to about 56 on the website. Again, we stress that this is an estimate, but it's a great tool to have in our, that we didn't have during Harvey, to really help us out. It's important to know timing. Things upstream obviously occur much quicker than things downstream. This is all based on flow estimates that are in the flood forecast. It's based on forecast rainfall in a lot of cases, and so things can change, but it's a very good tool that we have that's available to the public. Again, at the beginning I said I was going to talk about Fort Bend County levees. I think I just have this one slide, but it's important to note you guys are Fort Bend County Lid 6, but we have 20 districts total within Fort Bend County. They maintain about 100 miles of levee all throughout the county, and we have over 220,000 residents that live behind levees here in Fort Bend. Many of our biggest neighborhoods are protected by levees. Sienna, Greatwood, New Territory, Telfair, Riverstone, Pecan Grove, Kingdom Heights, and much of Sugarland, pretty much all the major hospitals, Memorial Hermann, St. Luke's, Methodist, they're all protected by levees, so they're vitally important. They protect about $30 billion in taxable value, and each of those districts has a director, a series of directors. You guys have 5, and each district has an engineer, an operator, and an attorney. I want to speak briefly on RABS values. We've talked a lot about the big picture watershed that you guys drain to, which is the Brazos, but your local watershed, where your water has to go before it gets to the Brazos, is RABS Bayou. The total watershed size is 5,700 acres. That's only about 1% of Fort Bend County, so it's not real big. The headwaters of it is actually across the railroad tracks in Rosenberg and Richmond. If you drive down Thompson Highway, as you approach the YMCA near Hillcrest, you'll see a concrete line channel. That's one branch of it, and there's another branch that comes in just north of Calvary Episcopal. Those two come together. That makes RABS Bayou. It comes back behind the Justice Center through Del Webb. It crosses between Terra and Greatwood and enters the Brazos River in Sugarland. We also have a flood gauge, a rainfall and flood gauge that we installed Specifically on Raps Bayou at the Del Webb Boulevard Bridge, you may have seen the gauge housing right here. The bucket at the top is a rainfall catch basin, and it'll tell us every 5 minutes how much rainfall has occurred. And then if you walk alongside that bridge, you'd see a conduit that has a pressure transducer in it that's constantly monitoring the water at that level. The data you can see there was actually from Hurricane Beryl. We got 7.24 inches of rain. Again, not a whole lot of rain. It's a big amount of rain. It's not in feet, but it's a big amount. And it's a short duration. That was probably about a 5 to 10 year return frequency for a 6 hour duration event. And the creek itself went up about 9 feet. So again, that if you want to monitor rainfall and Raps Bayou levels, make sure you check out this gauge. That gauge can be accessed through our Fort Bend County Drainage District website, as can the inundation mapping that we talked about. We've got LiDAR topographic maps available on that website, historic flood photos, FEMA floodplain data, all the different links, including the Brazos River Richmond link, Fort Bend County Levee District data. So there's a lot of good resources if you go to our website, and that's on Dave's magnet that he sent out. So again, just some highlights, key takeaways. Your local watershed is Raps Bayou, and the primary watershed you drain to, obviously keep an eye on, is the Brazos River. Rainfall to our northwest. We have to watch for that, keep a wary eye on anything that falls to our northwest. The core reservoirs obviously significantly benefit us, and they're to be commended. Focus on the Brazos River Richmond gauge. There's a lot of gauges out there, and we watch them from Waco all the way down. Bryan, Hempstead, San Felipe, there's one in Orchard, Richmond, Sugar Land, and LaSharon. But Richmond is the primary gauge, particularly for you all in Lid 6. 45 feet is a minor flood, 50 feet is major flood stage, 55 was the Harvey peak. Make use of our Del Webb flood warning system gauge we have on RABs. And again, during an event, keep a close eye on your Lid 6 website, Fort Bend County Homeland Security and Emergency Management, and the National Weather Service. We're always talking, coordinating, and we'll relay that information to you. So, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Jeff. So you've gotten the big picture from FEMA, from NOAA, and from Fort Bend County Flood Control, and now we're going to kind of specialize and look more at Lid 6 and Veranda and Williams Ranch and Sweetgrass. One question I was going to ask early on and I forgot. How many of you were here for Harvey? How many of you were here? Okay. And how many not here? Oh, well, more veterans, a lot more veterans. Okay. Well, you're going to get some neat stuff from Ron, and a really good. How many of you also gotten that kind of a slice through like a topographical map, and it showed, yeah, this is what the lady's holding up. You got those, and Ron did that, so we got to thank him for that. That's a really, really interesting view of Lid 6. He will.
Yes, I'm going to go over that. That's going to be my last slide. Again, my name is Ron Deckard. I'm the district engineer in Fort Bend County. Hello? I was the design engineer and project manager on the Fort Bend County Lid 6 construction in 2008. That's when that levee was constructed early on in Del Webb Sweetgrass. Brandon wasn't in the picture yet. So
louder?
I'm basically just going to go over it.
I'm not sure which one it is. I can't tell.
Some of the Lid 6 facilities, and then at the end of some of those elevations that Jeff talked about, how they impact our district. So first, I know Jeff kind of had this on the slides, a little overview, show you how Lid 6 interacts with the levee districts to the east. Lid 6 is there in yellow. That's the district boundaries of Lid 6. You can see it does go down south of 59. There's also a little 5-acre tract that's outside the levee That's technically in the Lid 6 boundaries. That was filled above the 100 year, but that has not been developed yet. The levee, actual levee, you can see is in green here, and it ties into high ground behind the, goes east, ties into Mud 121. This piece right here is the connector levee. It ties in Mud 121's levee to Lid 10. Lid 10 levee comes around here, and then Lid 11 over in Greatwood. So this forms a perimeter levee system. You can see a lot of levees in Fort Bend County have a ring system. And what I mean by that is the districts have a levee that goes around their district to protect them. This is a perimeter levee system. We just have a levee on the river side. We built this connector piece to block off the flow there. The levee here is an earthen levee, suitable clay material, built that 10 foot wide. It's at least 4 foot above the 100 year of the Brazos River. It's 3 feet for FEMA and an extra 1 foot Fort Bend County added. The 100 year. The Ransom Road, the connector piece, is actually part of Ransom Road. If you're driving on Ransom Road there, you're driving on our levee. The core of that road was elevated, so that's part of the levee. So that's kind of a bigger picture of how all these levees interact with each other and with Fort Bend County. Lid 6 levee does protect a lot more property than actually in your boundaries. Jeff talked about Rav's Bayou. Because we're not a ring levee, we don't have any stormwater pump stations. Everything is gravity flow. All your flow, there's no flow that goes north in your district. Everything goes to Rav's and comes on downstream. So there's really 3 kind of flooding events that can happen in your district. One, when you're getting a localized rain right on top of you, and the river's low, then your Lid 6 facilities are these your ditches, detention ponds, things like that in your levee district. You have an event where the river's up and we're not seeing any rain. That's when your levees are protecting you. And then you can see like Harvey, where we have both the river's up and we're getting a ton of rain. I'm gonna focus now on my next couple slides of just this part of the district. So in red now is your district boundaries. There is a little piece over here, but we'll concentrate on this. You have 4 mud districts in Lid 6. Fort Bend County Mud 215, which is the Veranda. Fort Bend County 187, which is Del Webb. You have the William Trench Mud 1, and then Fort Bend County Mud 207, which is the George Foundation property. Del Webb, Veranda, and William Branch are pretty much built out. The future development you'll see is in Fort Bend County Mud 207. That kind of gives you an overview. It's a big district. There's a lot of homes. I think Dave talked about how many homes you have in Lid 6. This gives you an overview of the different HUDs in there. Drainage in your district. I've put some colored arrows up here so you kind of see how internally Lid 6 drains. This blue arrows, Veranda East and Williams Ranch drain to the east through what we call the Williams Ranch ditch that outfalls to Rav's Bayou. The red is all Del Webb drainage. It drains to you have amenity ponds, so you have lakes, and it drains through your lakes into a control structure here. That you can see at the south end of that lake by your lake house. I have a picture of it that I'll show you. Into, I think this is called Serenity Lake, is it? Serenity Pond. And then over into Rav's Bayou. And then you have your orange arrows, which is Veranda West, that drain through. They have different kind of ponds. They have more of a wetland look, not your lake look. And it drains into Rav's Bayou over here. As you can see, nothing drains north of your levee. There was an existing outfall ditch for Mud 121 that Before all this development, everything drained over here. They had to pick up that water and drain it out to the river. So a big ditch you see by the elementary school is that their drainage ditch for outside the levee. When we tied in to mud 121, we had to cross that ditch. So that is your main control structures, your flat gates and your sluice gates that keep water out. That's the only hole in your levee on this side is right there. And we have gates that I'm going to show you pictures of those as well. A lot of questions come up with new development. When Del Webb was the first, you guys, or most of you guys were the first ones out there, we have to, the engineers do a drainage impact analysis to show that there's no impacts upstream or downstream. So we build these big drainage facilities, these ponds. Fort Bend County Drainage District, mud engineers, city reviews that. So there's a lot of eyes on it. We follow Fort Bend County criteria, so we can't impact upstream or downstream when we do new developments. Miranda did that when they developed. Now George Foundation is developing. They're providing those same reports. So when you see new development out there, just know there's a lot of eyes on that. We want to make sure there's no impacts with that new development. So they build the detention ponds and mitigation ponds for that. This is the control structure for the Del Webb ponds. You have a mini lake or wet lake at a static water elevation. So these openings right here, when the water level gets high, they flow into those inlets and then out falls into Serenity Pond and then out into Rapid Bayou. Last summer, I think we were keeping an eye on this because we weren't getting a lot of rain. You kind of measure how far your lakes were draining. That's really not a lid problem. Lid, we're concerned about water level up and storage. Water level down is HOA and keeping the fish happy. So for lid, we're just worried about storage. And that control structure is just south of your lake house. The control structures we're talking about, a lot of people ask, what's a flat gate, what's a sluice gate? This is the actual lid 6 flat gate. It's on the control structure just north of the elementary site. It's got these hinges on the top of it. Oops. These hinges, so you don't get an operator to open and close this gate. The water level comes up, it gets high, it pushes on the gate, the water pressure, and it seals it. Water from the other side comes in, it gets higher, it'll open the gate from the other side. The operator does look at these and make sure there's no trees or trash or debris or leaving them open to make sure they're sealed okay. But it's really, you don't have to open and close it. This is your main control structure on that house. On the other side, inside the levee, we have a sluice gate. This is raised and closed by your operator. This is the one you can see from Richmond Parkway. This one is open and closed during an emergency, high flood waters, or if there's a problem with your flat gate, something gets stuck in there, they close it. So you have your flat gate, and then you have this backup sluice gate to help keep water from coming through your levee there. Again, the operator does have to get out there and raise and lower it. If the river levels look really high, your operator is going to go ahead and shut it. Okay, here's the map Dave asked me to put together. What happens when the gauge reading and some of the other levels that Jeff talked about get up to, the 45, the minor flood stage, the moderate flood stage, and so on. So this is a snapshot of 45. River levels are coming up. We're not getting heavy rain right on top of us. It kind of shows you what the water levels are doing. So the Brazos River, the north of you, is still in its banks. The flat gate closes. No need to open or shut the sluice gate. Remember, everything in lid 6 flows south to Rapid Bayou. These elevations right here show the minimum or the lowest top of curbs and veranda and Del Webb. And for Williams Ranch, they're basically the same as the veranda. They didn't want to put another row of houses on here. Your lowest homes, the minimum slab elevations are shown here, 77.1, 77.2 feet. And going through, let me just go over here so I can see this. Going through the gauge readings, so the gauge reading and the actual elevation is about 27 feet. I took these from the NOAA website, the Brazos gauge. That's, like Jeff said, that's the one that you guys really want to be focused on. And that's where all these readings are from. So minor flood stage, 45, you got about 72 elevation. The Rabs backwater elevation back up, and this is approximate. If we're getting a bunch of heavy rains, Jeff showed the Rab watershed, the river's going to be a little higher. But this is an approximate elevation of what the water level looks like in Rabs at these gauge readings. So 48, moderate flood stage. You can see a 74.3 still on the banks. 65 back up from Rabs. Remember, your lowest top of curves are 75.2 and 75.9. The major flood stage, 50. Still no issues with the levee. Remember, we have we're at the 100-year plus 4 feet. That's the top of our levee. So we're really, for this area, we're really looking at the Rabs back up. Harvey's up here, 55.2. We actually measured the backup of Rabs on your outfalls. It was 72.2 feet. Still lower than your top of curves, because you were getting a lot of rain. So y'all had a little bit of water in the streets because of the rain getting into the inlets. And then the 100-year on the river, 55.8, back up 72.8, and then I just put this one in there. That's predicted to get up to 59 feet here in Harvey. Your top of your levee is 86.5, so that water would have been up on your levee, and the backup would have been in your streets, but not to the minimum slab elevation. So really for lid sticks, anything under 50, you're covered. You don't have to worry about it. When it gets over to 52, you start looking at roads outside your district, getting flooded with water. That's when the county's going to get involved and tell people we need to evacuate. Not because the 6 is in trouble, but there's no way in and out. I know I talked fast. I think I covered it all. Now, that was really all I have, but I'll look forward to questions that you have after. I just put this one in there. That's they predicted to get up to 59 feet here in Harvey. Your top of your levee is 86.5, so that water would have been up on your levee, and the backup would have been in your streets, but not to the minimum slab elevation. So really for lid sticks, anything under 50, you're covered. You don't have to worry about it. When it gets over to 52, you start looking at roads outside your district, getting flooded with water. That's when the county's going to get involved and tell people we need to evacuate. Not because the 6 is in trouble, but there's no way in and out. I know I talked fast. I think I covered it all. Now, that was really all I have, but I'll look forward to questions that you have after.
Thanks, Greg.
So the backstory on this is
maybe, was it 5 weeks ago when they had that thing they called it the Rachel or whatever it was, that storm, and I was getting calls, and they said it's going to be at 45 feet. What do we do? And I said, I don't know. The levee's like 86 feet tall, and 45 is not going to hurt you very much. And that was sort of the start of these sketches and things like that. But 45 feet is basically nothing for Del Webb, Veranda, Williams Ranch for Lid 6. But what we're going to do here from Greg is get more ideas. When the people called me, what did I do? I called Greg. It was like 11:45 in the morning. He said he's talking. I guess it was Jeff and Ron. They were all sitting there, probably in the Fort Bend County office. Maybe it was even with Judge George listening. And he said, we're going to go on TV. So here we are. We're Fort Bend, okay? And we're, I don't know, in the top 20 counties in the state or something like that. Not one single word of what they said got out from 2, 11, or 13, or 26 until about the 5 o'clock news or 6 o'clock news on 26 on Friday. So that was the deal behind these things, because when you don't hear anything on TV, if you click these links, you're going to get good current information. So I got that information from all of these folks. Thank you. And here's Greg.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, I'm going to need that too.
Say hi, Dad.
All right, thank you very much. Greg Baps, Emergency Management Coordinator for Fort Bend County. We work under Judge George. He's actually the head of emergency management in Fort Bend County. So, first off, what day is it? July 18th. I've been at the EOC since who knows when. Okay, this is my first day off, and that's why my little kids are back there. This was the first night that I finally got to go home. So, very, very thankful, and I'm thankful that I got to finally have a day off, get out of the EOC, and then come out and talk to everybody, and maybe answer some questions.
It's my birthday, so I don't feel sorry.
There we go. All right. You one-up me. All right. First off, who knows where the Emergency Operations Center is for Fort Bend County? All right. We got some hands up. That is good. That Fort Bend County Emergency Operations Center is just down in Richmond, 307 4th Street. It was where the old Emergency Operations Center was. The new one was just initiated just 2 years ago, June 3rd, 2022. Okay? Now, I tell everybody, we went from a rowboat to a spaceship. Okay? And if you've never seen the facility, we welcome you to come on down and take a tour of it, but it looks like NASA, and I'm not going to lie, right? And thank goodness we have these educated men that just spoke and told you all this wonderful stuff to run the spaceship, okay? They tell me we need to be worried, right? And then that's when I say, Judge, let's call some people in, let's activate the spaceship, right? And that's because of their education and everything that they bring in, that knowledge, wisdom, experience that they bring inside that EOC. And there's anywhere between 60 to 70 people that come in when we hit that activation button to help all the residents to be better prepared and then activate that emergency operations plan, okay? So, I do not do this alone. It's all because of them. All I do is direct traffic. That's it. Okay? But we're going to go over some preparedness stuff like we mentioned. Usually we do this before hurricane season, right? We're in it. We've had it. We're going to continue in it. And as Dan mentioned, we just started, right? So I will say this. During this storm and pre-storm, this storm basically befooled us. I would say in the Emergency Operations Center, we kept thinking, I don't know if it's coming this way. But in the back of our minds, we said, we better be prepared. And so we called everybody in early, we moved assets, we staged, and we were able to respond for this Hurricane Beryl. So, and then, again, here we are, July 18th. It's still doing a lot of stuff that's going on. There's going to be a little bit of time for recovery. Okay? I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end, and what I need from y'all for future storms, and still now for this storm, okay? All right, so, basic emergency preparedness, right? What we do, okay? We try and help the citizens, right? Because I can only take the horse to water, right? I can't get him to drink. Now, we try to help those citizens, cities, and the county prepare for all types of disasters. So as we're talking about hurricane preparedness, weather events, we do it all when it comes to disasters, because it could be man-made or it can be environmental. We prepare for that, and we have plans inside the EOC that we activate to help manage those big incidents. All right. First off, who knows what the Fort Bend County mitigation plan is? Oh, that's not good. You're going to know now. All right. So every 5 years, the state requires every county to update their hazard mitigation plan. That hazard mitigation plan is held and built by every jurisdiction in this county, plus the very smart individuals that are with me today and many other departments, that we talk and we say, all right, what are the known risks in Fort Bend County? Then, how do we mitigate those risks? Then we come up with a plan. We push that plan up to the state approves it, and then FEMA approves it and pushes it back down to us. Every year we evaluate those risks, and if we have to heighten things, we watch out. But it's a good place to go. You can go on our website. I'll show that up here soon. But you can go there and you can review that mitigation plan. That mitigation plan does give you the risks, the known risks by percentage in this county for you to be prepared for.
Okay, so that's a good way to get that information. Also, I saw a lot of hands up that have been here a while, so you probably already know, right? So use your wisdom and also plan for that, knowing what you have risk for in your areas.
Next, once you know the risk, create a plan, okay? And for you and your family. I also say, not just for you and your family, but all those probably don't plan very well too, and are going to latch on to you, okay? Like my brother Mark, right? I know he's coming with me, right? Or I'm sending him with my family to go take them because I'm going to probably be at the Emergency Operations Center, right? So we plan for Mark to be part of our plan. Y'all. Okay? Stay informed. I'll talk about how you stay informed. And like David brought up, we weren't on the news a lot. I like to say because we were prepared, we planned, and we executed, right? But there was still disaster, and y'all need to know exactly what's going on so that you are better informed about how to react in that type of storm. And Dan brought up, we went right through the heat of it, right, for Fort Bend County. And it was very relevant inside the EOC once we started seeing all the calls coming in from 911. And we were sending units out and responding as soon as that eye wall went right over the top of Fort Bend County. And if you look at it now, if you saw some mapping out there right now, that whole eastern side of the county, that's where the trouble is. A lot of the disaster and a lot of the debris that's out there right now. So that we're out there now cleaning all that up. And I don't say we, not the EOC, right? We've hired contractors and they're out there. So don't throw stuff at me if your debris hasn't been picked up yet. And we're coordinating that. They did a very, very fine job of that inside of this county. All the elected officials support. We were able to get a debris contract almost before any other county after this disaster. First one. Now you got a lot of other counties going, how they do that? Why are they getting their debris picked up already, right? So thanks to those elected officials, thanks to everybody in the Fort Bend County EOC and our Road and Bridge Department for getting that up and getting it running. Staying informed, who follows us on social media? All right, better be more hands. Because if you can't see us on the news, I can tell you what, we on Facebook, right? We on Twitter, and we on Instagram. So, again, please follow us on Facebook, follow the county on Facebook, all the departments, Health and Human Services, because if you're not getting it out in that media, it's definitely on Facebook, all right? In those wonderful social media areas. Now, if you don't have the capability to be on Facebook because you don't have a smartphone or you don't have those services, I'm pretty sure you got a kid or a friend or a daughter or a son that's running it all the time. Steal that phone, right, in that disaster and say, hey, pull up Homeland Security, Emergency Management, right, and we need to watch what's going on in Fort Bend County, all right? Tell them to follow us. All right, and then the biggest thing, and this is kind of being missed nowadays, especially after COVID, right? Know your neighbors, get out, know that community, and help each other. Ever since COVID, everybody kind of hunkered down, and we haven't really spread our wings yet, right? To get out, to get to know each other, right? We took our masks off. Let's get out there and know each other so that we can be better prepared. Unless I say, and not me, the Health and Human Services Office says, hey, there's a pandemic, right? Shelter in place. Now hunker back down, okay? All right, so I'm going to cheat. You guys don't have to go to your mitigation plan, but these are some of the known risks in Fort Bend County, those top ones, right? Obviously, hurricanes and tornadoes, severe weather, flooding, chemical releases, pandemic, cyber, and active shooter. Those are the ones we really plan for in this county. Those are the highest risk and highest potential. There's a shot of Beryl, and you've seen enough of that. Dan told you and had wonderful graphics and all that stuff. All right. Also, if you don't know, and I'm sure you do, there's a lot of pipelines and a lot of railroads that run through this county, and because of that, they carry a lot of icky stuff. Okay? And when that stuff is icky and it goes, it's hazards, right, in this county. When those hazards come out, right, you will usually hear an alert from us, and it'll usually be on your smartphone or your, anybody still have landline? All right, it'll come on your landline if you're registered, right? It's going to go to your email. However you register, you're going to get an alert, okay? And that's through our iPod system or our alerting system to let you know, hey, there was a hazard, stay away from this area, here's the hot zone, and whatnot. Or if you have to evacuate, or if we tell you to shelter in place, okay? All right, first rule. If you're on an airplane, what's the first thing they say when the oxygen mask comes down? Take care of yourself, right? So you can take care of everybody else. Same motto goes in emergency management. Must take care of yourself so you can take care of others. So when you're writing your plan, write yourself in the plan, right? Make sure you know how to work that plan. Put those other members in your party or in your family into that plan and make sure that they're aware too. All right. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about evacuation. And I do it a little bit different because I like to talk reality. Okay. Who knows that Fort Bend County is a pass-through county?
Everybody.
Good deal. Who knows what a pass-through county is? There we go. Here comes the discussion, right? Everybody wants to debate about it.
Okay. All right. During a hurricane, right, Fort Bend County becomes a pass-through county for coastal counties. And what those evacuation routes are meant for, they're ran through the Department of DPS, okay? They create that plan to evacuate the coast, because like Dan mentioned, right, what's the biggest killer in a hurricane? Storm surge, right? So we want to get everybody off the coast, right? So those evacuation routes are meant to enact the coastal evacuations and keep people moving on those evacuation routes through Fort Bend County. We do not want them to bunker down here because we are an impact county. You go coastal counties, impact counties, then everything west of us or north of us is a safer county. So they can get there and they're going to be potentially safer than in Fort Bend County. So we want them to pass through. Now, for your evacuation routes, okay, you can go to the evacuation routes. But no, I would probably check Waze, Apple Mapping, or whatever before you take off and look at what that traffic is. You should also have in your plan different routes around those evacuation routes to get out of the area when we tell you to evacuate. Okay? Because usually a lot of that traffic is going to be held by that coastal county and then moving through Fort Bend County. So, Jeff brought up a really good point on their mapping systems on their webpage you can go to. You can type in your address. It's going to quickly say, there you live on that map, and then you can start playing with all the functions on there to say, hey, at Richmond River Gauge, at 55 feet, if my house is in that blue inundation over that top, when you put that inundation layer in, you're in a flood area, right? And so then you need to know how to get out. So then use that inundation mapping and looking where you would have to go to get away from that water and to be safe, okay? So that's how we kind of tell everybody how to plan for evacuations. Have multiple layers of evacuation routes from your residence. So then if there's a disaster and we tell you to evacuate. Now, I'm going to talk about a little bit about evacuation. When it comes to the Emergency Operations Center, okay, there's going to be either a mandatory evacuation or a voluntary evacuation. The reason why is because the state of Texas, right, the judge can't tell you to leave unless we're under a declaration, Title 418, okay? Other than that, it's voluntary. We got to say it's a voluntary evacuation. Now, we're going to try to get away from the term voluntary because when people hear voluntary, they don't leave, right? Because it's voluntary, right? But if I say recommended, that kind of changes some things, right? Now, if an elected official is telling you to evacuate in your area, leave, okay? And I say this with whole heart because there is so much data from Jeff, from all those wonderful persons that are inside the EOC that are strategizing to say, this is going to be bad and this area needs to leave. Then that has to go all the way up through all the EOC, through the county attorney, and to the judge to say, yep, we need to leave. Now, the judge can just automatically say, yes, evacuate, but he doesn't do that. He runs that through those subject matter experts inside the EOC, and he makes sure that it is a thing, and we need to evacuate. Now, another note, and actually the Weather Service taught me this little tidbit of information, and I really liked it, so I'm going to steal it from them. If you get in your car, and you're going to drive from point A to point B, you get in, you put your seatbelt on, and you drive to point B, and you get out, nothing happened to you. No accidents, you didn't run into anybody, you didn't run any red lights, right? And you get out, and you undo that seatbelt, you get out and go, man, I don't know why they make me wear this seatbelt. No, you don't. You wear the seatbelt because it's safe, just in case something happens. Think of that as an evacuation, okay? So if they're telling you to evacuate, it's like a seatbelt. They're saying you need to leave because there could be harm in your area. Now, take this advice. If you come back and nothing happened to your resident, don't be mad at us, right? Because we told you to evacuate, right? Be happy that nothing happened to your resident, right? Okay. So if you just think about that, it's a great little tidbit from the National Weather Service. It's a seatbelt. That's all an evacuation order is. Okay? And what do we call it in Texas? It's an evacuation or something like that, right? We're going to evacuate to go on vacation, right? Hurricane. There it is. All right. 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 Then we're going to build a kit. We should store the kit.
What do you do when you can't evacuate? I mean, like right now, our main way out of here is 59, and they're saying they got to build that whole bridge over